Is Lieutenant Chris Oliverez of the Texas Department of Public Safety. Lieutenant, it is good to see you again. I want to jump right in here because we just heard Jorge Ventura talking about this report, the spike in gang members crossing the border illegally. Why is this right now, and how many do you fear are getting away and entering this country?
Well, Natasha, that's always been a concern of us, as far as in Texas, especially when we launched Operation Lone Star back in March of 2021. The concern was public safety and national security threats, more so than just, supporting Border Patrol with the influx of illegal immigrants that were coming across the border that were turning themselves in, but the gotaways, the gangs that were going to take advantage, that were going to exploit the situation on the border, which they've been doing so for the last 3 years, especially the cartels. The cartels are well aware of what's taking place on the border. They're well aware of any policy changes, so they know what's taking place and they can monitor that in real time, and they take full advantage of that. And that's why we see this increase in criminal gangs that are coming across the border. But that has always been known. That's why we talk about gotaways. You brought up a very good point early on, is when we talk about the gotaways, that stash house that we were able to identify and recover those 29 illegal immigrants, that's an example of gotaways. Those individuals were either caught on a camera and Border Patrol didn't have the resources to apprehend them, or they weren't even caught on the camera at all. So they could be unknown gotaways. So really shows the example of how some of these individuals are able to get across the border illegally, but also in terms of who's amongst those groups in these stash houses. It's not just economic migrants, those that are looking for work, that are trying to get further into the interior, but also gangs, criminal gangs, special interest aliens that have ties to special interest countries that have ties to terrorism. So it makes it very, very dangerous, especially when these stash houses are amongst the communities, these neighborhoods along the border. So that's why it's very important to identify and go after these criminal organizations that are facilitating these stash houses.
Yeah, tell me more about these stash houses, because we were actually showing those images in that video that you posted on X. Tell me more about this. So how critical is it to bust these stash houses before people are brought there, right, who are trafficked over the border? And that is the point from which they will just be disseminated to the wind throughout this country. How difficult is it to find these stash houses? How crucial is it to find these stash houses?
Well, it's very critical, and also it is very challenging as well. And that's why, back in 2022, Governor Abbott, in conjunction with our agency, the Texas Department of Public Safety, increased the reward for anyone that could provide information that would lead to the discovery of a stash house. Right now, the reward is $5,000, and these people can remain anonymous. So we do urge the public to help us to try to identify these stash houses, and that is what led to the success of being able to identify over 500 stash houses and nearly 5,000 legal immigrants that were recovered. So it is very challenging, very critical to be able to identify, because also in some of these groups that I talked about earlier, you do have women and children that are in these stash houses that are being kept, either because they need to provide payment, or they're trying to get them further moved into the interior. And in some cases that they don't have the money to pay, that you do see some of these cases where these criminals that are operating these stash houses will either sexually abuse these women and children or sexual assault. That's why it's very critical to be able to identify these stash houses. That's why we do require the public's help to help us to identify them. And that's why it's very important to us, not only in terms of public safety, but also the human aspect of it.
Right.
We
I mean, that
perspective,
I don't mean to interrupt, that perspective is so important. It is for their safety as well in some cases. All right, Lieutenant Chris Oliverez, it is always good to see you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.